Hey everyone, Dr. Rob here. I want to take a moment to spotlight my sponsors, Professional Co-op, empowering clinicians with premium access to top-tier lab services at a fraction of the cost. Since 2001, Professional Co-op has redefined what efficient, patient-centered support should look like. No hidden fees, no minimums, and you only pay for completed tests. It's lab access made simple, transparent, and affordable. Trusted by licensed healthcare professionals across the country, Professional Co-op is your strategic partner in delivering high-quality care. Discover more at www.professionalco-op.com. A quick shout out to my other sponsor, Functional Medicine University, one of the top online programs for learning functional medicine. Founded by Dr. Ron Grisanti, FMU has trained thousands of healthcare professionals in over 50 states and over 68 countries. It's completely online, self-paced, and CE approved for a wide range of clinicians, MDs, DCs, NDs, PAs, and more. At the end of the program, you earn your certified functional medicine practitioner credential, something that's truly elevated my clinical approach. If you're ready to level up your practice with evidence-based root cause care, FMU is the place to start. Check them out at functionalmedicineuniversity.com. As a practitioner, I only use products I believe in, and Nutridyne is at the top of that list. What I love about Nutridyne is their unwavering commitment to quality, transparency, and science. Their products are practitioner exclusive, which means they're built specifically for clinical use. That matters when you're trying to get real results. From foundational support to condition-specific protocols, I've seen firsthand the difference Nutridyne makes in my patient's health and in my practice. Hey everybody, Dr. Rob Silverman here, Proven Health Alternatives. My guest today, my luminary, Jay Lacayo. Jay,
How's-
how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you for having me. I appreciate that.
Thanks for coming on. You've got a great extensive career in law enforcement, but I just want everybody to know you are a SWAT officer. And I got to ask you the question, as a SWAT officer, I watched the show, man. Tell me some things about like, how do you get to SWAT?
There's different avenues to
Mhm.
get to SWAT. So some people go like the proactive right, the proactive route, which is what I did. I was in a proactive unit, and it was kind of the natural progression to go from a proactive unit into SWAT or ESU, emergency services. So that was something that I always wanted to do as a police officer. So rightfully so, I figured out what the route was going to be and kind of progress towards that way. But other people who have like a background in maybe like volunteer firefighting, who are prior either EMTs or medics, they tend to lean towards this way. This way meaning the emergency services or slash SWAT route, or you can be prior military, which is a lot of the ESU guys or SWAT guys were prior military, and it's a natural progression from going from prior military into ESU.
So you were a New York City police officer first. You switched to
Yes.
Westchester County in White
Hmm.
Plains.
Yep.
You were ESU, I think, for 10 years.
Yeah. 10 years. Yeah. Decade.
And
Yep.
then you went to SWAT.
No. So ESU and SWAT is one and the same.
Okay.
Over in LA, they'll call it SWAT. On the East Coast, we call it ESU, which is emergency services. And there's several different disciplines within emergency services.
So I got to ask you, I'm thinking about a second career. What physical tests do I have to take to get into SWAT? Because I mean, you guys are in great shape. I mean, again, I know the show, it's a TV show. They're shooting from a helicopter. I don't think you guys are doing that. I get that. But I mean, it's a rigorous physical test. I mean, not everybody can pass.
Yeah. So the way we do it here is you have to pass the Cooper test in the 70th percentile. So the Cooper test is a test based on a mile and a half run, push-ups and sit-ups, right, according to your age and gender. So you have to pass that in the 70th percentile. So at the time when I went through SWAT school, I had to get in I think I had to run a mile and a half in like 10 minutes and 3 seconds.
Okay.
I completed it in 9:49, and then it's like push-ups and sit-ups. I forgot what the number was. But past that, then you have to do a obstacle course that they set up for you,
Hmm.
which is all job-driven tasks that are associated with emergency services. So it's like, traversing stairs, and they have a battery ram that you have to hit through a door as a sledgehammer. It's a bunch of things. Quite difficult. It's not for the faint-hearted. You have to make sure that you're in top physical condition because it is a position that requires a lot of you. So they want you to be at the peak of your performance. So not easy by any means, but we got it done. So
Is there any hand-to-hand, I mean, obviously there's hand-to-hand training, but is there any hand-to-hand or combat tests to be a SWAT
no,
officer?
no, that's not a requirement. It's literally just the Cooper standard, and then it has the obstacle course. There's no requirement to have hand to hand. You are liable to, so you have to go to firearms school, right, which is within the
Right.
SWAT school itself, and you have to shoot proficient. So you have to I think anything under a 90 is a fail. So
Wow.
yeah,
Now it's
high level.
handgun
Hand
shooting rifle.
Yeah, handgun, long gun, and then they have what they call 40 millimeter launchers, which launch like CS or less than lethal ammunition, to disperse crowds and so on. So you have to be proficient though.
To piggyback on the idea of hand-to-hand combat with police officers, we were talking off camera before about which styles or how they can prepare themselves for an unfortunate inevitability of hand-to-hand with an assailant.
Yeah, I think it should be a requirement. I always tell guys you should do some kind of combat training of some sort. I'm a huge proponent of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because, almost 85 to 90% of our interactions come to some kind of grapple of some sort. So, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is great with when it comes to like weapon retention, and you get less injury when you have somebody who's proficient in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? So you can have someone who can, A, retain their weapon, but B, subdue an assailant or a suspect with minimal force, and it's less damage. I said when you get somebody in a compliance hold and they know, right, hey, I can't really get out of this, they will stop. But if you have someone who's not trained and doesn't know what they're doing, it just creates more of a window for injury and potential fatality.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is really popular, obviously, within the UFC. What about something like Krav Maga or Hapkido, where you can use a hold to gain control of somebody?
Krav is great too. Krav is more ideal for what we do because they kind of train real time, right? So they know there's no gis, there's no none of that, right? They'll come in dressed as is, and it goes back to it's like it's urban warfare, right? Because we're dealing with people on the street, right, or in close quarters because you could be in an apartment and have to take action. But it's something like Krav, some people might not like, right? Some people say judo or keto, that it's using someone's energy and redirecting them. Those kind of martial arts I feel are great. But even boxing, man, if you just know how to parry or block or counter, um it'll just help you because the more you know, the less of a chance you have to go into lethal force.
Do you think also in the martial arts, that mental aspect? I've noticed, I get nervous if I get pulled over and I feel the police officer's nervous.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
if you're more comfortable with the setting, more comfortable in the environment, you project that confidence and, if you will, control over the situation. Do you think that's an add from doing some martial arts training?
Yeah, because you definitely develop a ton of confidence because you know that you're capable of protecting yourself or your partner, right? And so having that knowledge does make you a more confident police officer. So I think a more confident police officer is a safer police officer. So I will agree with you 100% on that.
How do you mix in that training with your extensive exercise regimen? So you're lifting weights, you're doing flexibility, you're running, and you're also doing some sort of martial arts, bag, katas, whatever it may be.
You just kind of you loop it into your training program, right? You got to put it in where it fits, right? So my training schedule is it's like a 6-day training schedule, and so on the seventh day, right, I'll throw in some combat training, whether it's just doing some light rolling or because when I roll, I'm just doing it so that I know how to get out or into certain situations, right? So I'm not doing it for sport. I'm not doing it for competition. I'm doing it just to have the knowledge. So it's just being able to figure out a training regimen that suits your needs. So like if you're a guy that does like, you know, CrossFit, or you do just traditional strength training, right? You do, you know, chest, tries, shoulders, buys. I think you take a day and you allot a period of time where you can work on hand-to-hand combat or some kind of combat training, you know, be it hitting a bag or just, you know, rolling with a friend and just getting some key points.
You know, as a doctor of chiropractic for 26 years, we have to do continuing ed, and we should
Hmm.
every year. Each state's different. And I've told a lot of my colleagues that I think that there should be some tests to make sure that doctors in general, healthcare practitioners, are up to snuff. It's not necessarily knowing the new stuff, but their acuity is sharp enough to help people.
Yeah.
So now that I threw my field under the bus and I'm going to get some hate mail, I'm going to ask you, do you think if you were made police commissioner of the US, would you have intermittent testing to make sure everybody keeps up to a certain standard?
Yeah, I mean that would be the ideal situation, because it holds you liable, right? There's a sense of accountability when, you know, I would say quarterly that, you know, you'd be testing
Mm.
guys to make sure that they are performing at their best ability. But, you know, we don't live in a perfect world, and you know, but if I could have my way, I would do something quarterly. I wouldn't it wouldn't even be an annual thing. It would be quarterly. These guys would be getting tested.
Now, to revert back to the question we just talked about,
Hmm.
is there continuing ed? You know,
No, there's not a continuing ed. I think once you get on, you know, you're kind of free to go as you may, right? From that point. I mean, my job's a little different. We have in-service training every year that everybody in the department has to partake in. Um, which I think is great because we have, you know, there's so many things that we go over, like law updates, you know, federal and local laws. Like they kind of give you everything that you need, and it's every year we do it. So um, I think that all jobs should go to that, but not all jobs do. But there's no like national standard in place for, you know, departments worldwide. It's all according to where you work and how your department functions.
I meant to ask you, everybody brags about LA SWAT being the best. Why do they have that title, if you will?
Honestly, it's kind of like where SWAT like originated. So if you're a SWAT guy, you know about LAPD and like the term SWAT. That's why it never stuck on the East Coast, right? On the East Coast, we use emergency services or like a critical incident unit. We have different names. LA has SWAT, special weapons and tactics, or out west, it's strictly that, because they only deal with special weapons and tactics, whereas here on the East Coast, or, you know, on this side of the country, you know, emergency services has so many different disciplines. You have vehicle extrication, you have rope rescue, you have special weapons and tactics, like all those things all in one. So um, I think LA has that name or that reputation because they are one of the originators, and they specifically deal with special weapons and tactics. Obviously, you know the history of LA. LA was a super busy place,
Mm.
and so they got a lot of repetitions doing what they do.
You know, we live in Westchester County, both of us.
Hmm.
I practice in the next town over from White Plains and Hartsdale. I'm like 5 feet over the White Plains borderline. There's some very small, they're almost bedroom communities, and some of them are policed by 12 police officers. I know you
Yeah.
know which one I'm talking about.
Hmm.
How do you get around that when the surrounding areas are cities and there's a lot of activity?
It's tough, man. These smaller places don't require like what I call like intensive policing, right? It's basically an overwatch. That's all it really is, right? When you work in these small hamlets and villages, it's just overwatch. If you need additional resources, that's where the bigger cities kind of come into play, right? And those smaller jobs are the jobs that tend to pay the most because obviously in these places, right, the taxes are a lot higher. So your services need to meet those expectations of those tax prices
I hear.
around, man. Because a lot of guys that work in these big cities, they want to go to these small villages and these hamlets, you know, because they pay more to do less work.
Now, There's got to be some mental tests. I mean, again, this is not the average police officer, and I actually love all my police officers. Are very respectful. Tough
Hmm.
job. I don't think I'd want to walk around all day with the camera on my shoulder. I know you don't want to comment about that, but I mean, I'm sure that I make some mistakes in my sentences with patients in a, by accident, not using an article or something like that. I wouldn't want to be held to that standard. That
Yeah.
said, mental tests, you have to have some sort of increased mental acuity. So what tests do you take to be a SWAT officer?
So there's there's an interview process, right? So during the interview, they put you in scenarios, and they basically check to see how you would respond in adverse situations. And it's not a requirement, but it's something that a lot of teams do because you are part of a team, right? So you have to learn how to work well with others. You also have to know how to respond in high stress situations. So they give you a bunch of scenarios, and basically based off of your answers and uh, passing the Cooper test and so on and so forth, that's how they determine if you will make the team or not.
Now, I know because I've seen you in a gym, you're in great shape. You're lean, you're muscular, you're
Thank
quite
you. Appreciate
athletic.
that.
No, no worries. And you have a history of athletic events. I think you said you played some football
Yeah.
and you partake in a lot of things. So, what's your own personal regiment like to be able to, in your 40s, right?
Yeah. I'll be 43 in June.
Right, to be the SWAT officer.
My training's kind of simple. So I have like this hybrid kind of approach to it. So I like to log miles. So I run anywhere between 20 to 25 miles a week. You can break that up however, but try to break up I try to break up the runs over 5 days. So like 5 mile runs, and I do traditional strength training mixed with high intensity interval training.
Great.
So I have a push day, and I have a pull day, and then I have a lower body day as far as weight training, and then I have like a full body day. And I do incorporate a lot of zone two cardio just to build my aerobic baseline because it definitely does help with
Right,
the distance running, but also, when you build that aerobic baseline, your cardiovascular endurance goes through the roof. So
right.
it's a lot of it's slow and it's very, very monotonous, but it does help. I've learned as I've gotten older, if I build this baseline, it just makes me a little bit more efficient when I'm out there.
Outstanding. So I'm curious, now that we've chatted a little bit, what possessed you to be a police officer? I always love to ask people their why in their life. And I know you have an interesting one.
Yeah, so my father was in law enforcement. My father was a correction officer.
Mm,
My uncle was a New York City police officer. So I always grew up knowing that I wanted to wear some kind of uniform of some sort.
great.
My father also served in the military as well. So I think the natural progression for me was going to either be military or law enforcement. Um, I had the opportunity to join the NYPD in 2005. Prior to that, I was on the cusp of joining the military. I was going to join the Navy.
Mm.
And thankfully, the NYPD called me first, and I ended up signing up with the NYPD in '05. So, my reason for being a police officer comes from my family. I come from a line of first responders. So it was the family business. So rightfully so. That's what I did when I became of age.
Family business like Blue Bloods, great stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So like I said, I watched the show. My wife and I watched the show. We're hoping that they don't cancel it. Is that real what they do? Or is that TV real?
There's some reality to it. A lot of these shows are based on like somewhat true events, or or like a derivative of. So yeah, it's pretty accurate. Accurate. I mean, I think a lot of these shows get enough research where they can kind of base their show off of it, so they don't deviate too far from what actually happens.
Now you got a great background there. I mean, right behind you. I mean, you got a
Yeah,
lot of sneakers, man. Some look like
yeah.
basketball, some look like lifestyle. Where'd you get them
Gotta
all? What's up? There's got to be a background story to that.
So, growing up, I was always into like Michael Jordan, right? So Michael Jordan was he's my GOAT. I grew up watching Michael Jordan.
Mine also.
Uh, yeah, so 1991 when he won his first championship is where I kind of got bit by the sneaker bug. So the Jordan 6s came out. I begged my
Mm.
dad for a pair of sneakers. He bought me my first pair of Jordans in 1991, and I've been hooked ever since. I've been on a mission to collect every single Jordan that I ever wanted, which I did, and it's something that sticks with me to this day.
That's amazing. And by the way, I
Yeah,
agree with you on Jordan being the GOAT. I think LeBron is wonderful, but He's in the top three with Jabbar, so I'm sure we'll get a lot of flack on that, and
Oh,
that's
we're definitely gonna get
okay.
some flack for that.
I said, I'm sorry, I'm a Larry guy too and a Magic guy, but they're not there. But I will say
Hmm.
this, so I really, hey guys, everybody, I think Magic's better than Kobe. So
Oh
if you
wow, that's the first. Never heard that one. I'm
yeah,
a big Kobe guy. I'm a big Kobe guy.
Kobe was great.
Yeah.
Kobe was great, but I just think Magic was better. But they both have five.
Yes, they do.
And if Larry didn't hurt his back, things would have been different. And if Len Bias was there, team would have been different. But
Yeah. I just watched
uh,
something about Len Bias, and they said that he could have been better than Jordan. And you, s-
uh,
it, that's what they say. I mean, I can only go off of like guys who played with him. I think Horace Grant played with him, and Horace Grant stated that he was the baddest mother effer he's ever seen. And then someone stated that. Didn't you play with Michael Jordan? He repeated it again. He said he's the baddest dude that he's ever seen. So if a guy who's played with both can say that, then there has to be some kind of potential there. At least that's what I think.
Len Bias, he was wonderful. He had Jordan S type skill.
Hmm.
I think if he was three-quarters of what Jordan is, he would have changed the league with the Celtics with that front line.
Hmm.
But I wouldn't say he was Jordan. Remember James Worthy gave a great story about Michael Jordan in that he said I was better than him for the first 3 weeks in college. And then Michael just elevated. It's just like life. Like when you
Yeah,
started as a policeman, I'm sure you had a skill set. You've harnessed it and you've really flourished and fostered some great outcomes with it.
absolutely.
What amazes me, and I know we're going to go into the mental health a little later in the program, but how do you stay calm in the most stressful life and death situations? I mean, it's tough. What advice would you give everybody to how to stay calm?
It's a great question. It all goes back to training, right? I think I've trained enough to know that I can handle the worst of situations. So I think my preparation has always led me to have an extreme confidence when going into any kind of tumultuous situation. I feel like I've trained enough to know that if the worst of the worst does happen, I am trained up to a point where I can, I think, get through almost anything. So I've always been very confident in my skill set because I've trained enough to know that um, the worst case scenario, I think I'll end up on top. But I've always been a very calm guy in crazy situations. So I think just me just having a cool, calm demeanor when things get crazy has always helped me.
So I'm going to ask the question that everybody said when I had a SWAT officer on.
Hmm.
When I get pulled over for a car infraction, I know you don't do that anymore. And
Yeah,
of
haven't
course,
done
they
that quite
always
some
said,
time.
yeah, they always say, I didn't do anything, but okay.
Hmm.
How do they keep everything de-escalated? Because the policeman, the officer, is probably uncomfortable coming over to a car because I understand it's a very unsafe avenue for you guys to go through. So, what would you recommend to the person, me, that gets pulled over to keep it calm?
Yeah, just know that the police officer is not trying to ruin your day, right? He's only doing his job. So, I think most of the time when you get pulled over, you kind of know what you got pulled over for. Like me as a police officer, I get pulled over, right? I already know I have all the windows rolled down. I got my hands at 10 and 2. I don't want to give them any kind of reasons to feel uncomfortable. I have all windows rolled down. And I try to make the police officer feel as comfortable as possible. So, just realizing that they're doing a job that they didn't wake up in the morning, with an objective to ruin your life specifically. Just have an open mind, man, and just pay attention when you drive. I think a lot of us get very distracted, or sometimes our mood dictates the way we drive. So if you're upset, obviously you're gonna drive a lot faster. If you're gloomy, you're gonna drive slow. So just having an open mind and just understanding that the police officer is just doing his job, and and try to be as forthcoming as possible. I always say honesty is the best policy. Like if I know I'm speeding, I'll be like, listen, I know why you stopped me. I was driving fast. Sometimes that'll get you off the hook, man. I think if you become adversarial, that becomes more of an issue and then it escalates. So just not giving them a reason to take it to another level.
Right. I mean, I remember when I was younger, a long time ago, I used to get tickets.
Hmm.
And I went to an officer and I said, I don't get it. Why are you guys giving me tickets? He says, well, you probably deserved it. You probably did do something wrong. He said, what's your demeanor to piggyback on what you said? And now when an officer comes over, I'm just, yeah, yes, officer, no, officer.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, officer. And it seems to work better. And I wish there should be more training with young kids to de-escalate because, like you said, the cops aren't trying to hurt you, and but it's a tough stop for them.
Yeah, it's
That's
one of the most dangerous things you can do as a police officer is a car stop. So,
especially if the passenger has tinted windows.
yeah, which in most cases, a lot of cars are tinted. So
Right.
it's car stops and domestic violence incidents are the two most popular cause where police officers get hurt. So,
My staff in the front wants to know, can you share
mhm.
some insights into nutrition? What's your diet like?
Oh man, so I was plant-based for a very long time. I just recently went back to consuming animal protein. So I have a very, very, very simple diet. It's lean meat and green vegetables. I try to stay away from bread, rice. Not saying that I don't have it. It's just not as frequent as most people would. Lean protein, green vegetables. I do take supplements. I take glutathione, curcumin. What else do I take? NAD, which is I think has helped me tremendously in my later years. I've been taking NAD for the last like 3 years. So since I'm 40, I've been taking NAD. That definitely has helped me out a lot. And then, just making sure that I hydrate. So I try to drink my body weight in fluid ounces of water. I try to do that. And if I can't get that much water in, I'll have some kind of hydration supplement. And last but not least, sleep, man. Sleep is the real PED. Sleep hygiene is very tough, especially with police officers, because we work some odd hours. I right now have a phenomenal schedule, so I'm able to kind of hone in on some good sleep hygiene. But yeah, got to get that sleep. Got to get that sleep. That's something that I didn't do very early on in my career.
Yeah, I remember when you went vegan and you loved it because you said like the inflammatory feeling you may have had in your body because you do a lot. You're not really telling everybody. You do a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah,
You can move some weight. You're very fortunate. Being an athlete, you're able to do those Olympic lifts. I can say it for you. So
thank you.
I remember when you were plant-based, but you said it was a little hard to hold the muscularity with the plant-based, which is typical
Yeah.
complaint. So you went more plant forward. It's almost
Hmm.
like Tom Brady, where he does 80% plants and 20% protein, which makes a lot of sense. So we call
Yeah.
it plant forward. So that's a great takeaway. By the way, people who are plant-based, if they're not able to eat animal protein, if they add the branched chain amino acid leucine, leucine will signal enough protein, muscle protein synthesis to equal actually animal protein.
Oh
Love your
wow.
supplements. Yeah. So tell all your vegan friends they need to take leucine or they need to eat a shiitake mushroom. Remember, the king and the shiitake mushroom are the steak in a vegan place. My wife and I do eat vegan. We're not vegans, but we do eat vegan meals. We'll eat anything as long as it's a whole food, a real food, and we try to
Okay.
avoid ultra processed food like you are. But love
Yeah.
your supplement regimen. Glutathione is the master antioxidant. My recommendation on that, and we never get a chance to talk about this, is liposomal glutathione. It's much
Yeah,
easier.
that's what I take. I take a
Great.
liposomal version of it. Yes.
It's the master antioxidant. Curcumin is wonderful. Anti-inflammatory decreases what we call NF-kappa B inflammatory. NAD, absolutely. And I will tell you that David Sinclair now loves you. NMN makes NAD. There's a receptor site in the body, or a
Hmm.
reserve, I should say, in the body for NAD everywhere. And if you want to have mitochondrial function, you do need that NAD. Man, you hit the two big ones. Drink some water and get some rest. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been a huge game changer. I think when you're young, you take those things and you don't even consider them as factors. But I think as you get older, especially, working the shifts that I've worked, I think 90% of my career has been evenings, right? Or some variation of. So, sleep is not something that I felt like I needed until as I got older, you know, um, you start to notice a little bit of a decline in like your cognitive function if you don't sleep as much. And so, another supplement that I take that I didn't mention too was creatine, and I take it for the cognitive effects. It's great for muscle development and so on, but I like what it does for me for on the cognitive level. It is phenomenal because I notice the days where I do take and the days I don't, and it's a little bit there's a little bit of brain fog when I don't take
Mm.
it, and I notice I'm a lot sharper when I have my creatine.
Yeah, creatine produces or allows ADP to go to ATP.
Okay.
The brain is mitochondria, number one mitochondrial organ. That ability to process energy gives you the ability to have more of a cognitive effect. Love creatine. I tell everybody, I wrote my thesis on creatine when I left Cairo school. I think it was about 26 years ago.
Wow.
And it was like the BPC 157. Yo, don't take that. You're going to tear your tendon.
Hmm.
You're going to do this. So a lot of these athletes who were using different kind of supplements, i.e. steroids, were saying they were taking creatine, but it was the steroid and the excessive amount that was damaging their tendon. So
Uh,
creatine is a great choice, short and long-term amnesia, and much better cognitively for women than men, believe it or not.
really didn't know that.
Yeah,
Didn't know that.
so share with all the female officers. Want to turn a page. You've got
Yeah.
a great history in this. You become a part of a mental health outreach team. Tell us what that is.
The mental health outreach team that I work for is attached to my department. We have a social worker that's attached to the unit as well. But basically, what we deal with is people in crisis, the homeless population, and anyone who has issues with substance abuse within our community. So, I go out on the streets of White Plains, and it's call specific, and I basically attach these people to services. So, if you're homeless or unhoused, if you suffer from some kind of mental illness of some sort or substance abuse, which kind of goes hand in hand. You'll deal with us, my unit, and we will attach you to services within the county. And it's great because I get to give back. Also, I'm a peer supporter for my job. So any kind of police officer who's going through something, I work with two non-for-profits, and I'm able to get them services as well. So it's more of a me giving back. I've been a cop for 20 years. This July 11th makes
Wow.
20 years. I did 2 years in New York City and 18 years as of tomorrow in White Plains. So it's a great, great, great avenue for me to give back.
That's fabulous. That's compelling. I mean, so many Americans have mental health issues. I mean, we
Hmm.
were talking about it. I've said it before. I'm afraid of heights. I'm deadly afraid of heights. You put me on top of a mountain, I'll tell you anything about my mom. No doubt about it. Anything to get out of that scenario.
Yeah,
But from what you've seen, why do you think so many Americans suffer from mental health issues?
I think it's a cumulative thing, right? I think over a period of time, we're underneath so much stress, and you can only put so much weight in a book bag, right, until it starts to affect you. And I believe that just my personal experience, I witnessed a lot of things as a young child, and you know um therapy wasn't a thing back then. So over a period of time, that trauma, that perceived trauma, spills over into your adult life, and if you've never unpacked it, at some point it will, we're all one incident away
Hmm.
from having a mental health crisis. But I think it's due to, the things that you experienced growing up, and I think right now is a very tough time, especially after COVID. I think you saw a
Yeah.
huge spike after COVID up, that isolation and
Mm.
not being, humans are social creatures, and not being able to be around your loved ones, the social distancing was, I think that weighed a lot on people, plus the unknown, right? We didn't really know much about COVID. We knew it was, something that was making people die. And so I think a lot of people just got in their own heads, and between the isolation and everything else that was going on, that kind of created the spike in the mental health crisis in the United States.
Yeah, I saw a precipitous rise in that as well. And I agree
Mm,
with you. We are beings, everybody says, I want to get away from it all. I wish it was on a desert island by myself. I
yeah.
don't think you'd be very happy for a long period of time. I wholeheartedly agree with you. And to speak to that, I think if we have another pandemic or something like that, I don't think people are going to isolate. I think they're going to do what they want to do. And I think we hurt our
Yeah, I
education
agree.
system with that a lot also.
Yep. Yep.
Um, I mean,
Saw that firsthand.
chiropractors, we're going to chiropractic school learning how to adjust. It's obviously man, hand to hand to hand. I was going to go mano to mano. Um, and they actually got through school almost literally not touching anybody. And same thing with a lot of medical interns. So I just don't see that happening. But I'm curious. I got an expert here. Where do you see law enforcement going in the next 5 to 10 years?
Oof, man. I don't, honestly, it's really tough to say because um, there's a lot of factors, and it's different in different places. I think technology is going to take over because that is really at the forefront now. There's a drone program in New York City. There's robotic canines now. So technology is, I think, going to be at the forefront. And right now, a lot of people don't want to take this job. So,
Mm,
um, it, you know, I know we laugh and we joke about the movie Terminator, but or I, Robot, but I think with Tesla creating that android, that humanoid, I think you might see something uh, in that space. Not 5 to 10 years, but I do believe that it's going to be hard to fill these positions, right, with humans. If they can create a robotic canine, what's to say they can't create a robotic police officer? Just saying, it's a thought that's been in my head for a while, because of the advances that they've made in policing. I'm from the era of no camera phones, and uh, I started where there were no camera phones out there to now there's fiber optic networks that run through cities where you can see a freckle on someone's face. So I think technology is going to be at the forefront, and they're going to make the adjustments from there.
So I don't know if you'll be able to answer these questions, but I'll hit
Hmm.
you with it. What do you think a typical police officer should be? I'm going to use the word armed with, but because I can't think of another word.
Hmm.
What do you think they need to be able to do their job appropriately?
I mean, pretty much everything that we have now, because since the whole like police reform thing, they've given us more than enough tools, right? So obviously you're gonna have your firearm, you're gonna have your ammunition for that, so two magazines, and then you're gonna have some kind of less than lethal, uh, so like a taser, and then you have the impact tool would be like a expandable baton of some sort, and your radio is probably the most valuable thing that's on your person. So
Mm.
I feel as if that should get the job done. If not, you got some bigger problems on your hand.
So I always ask a lot of guys that have really come up the ranks like you have. I have a friend in NYPD that's head of detectives. How
Mhm.
does your job, your position differ from, and I know these are different organizations, let's say FBI and Secret Service?
The only difference is that I'm just more in a local municipality. Stuff is only catered to certain things. Whereas, like, if I'm a patrol officer, I'm the jack of all trades, right? When you become a detective, you are specialized in whatever discipline that the unit that you're in, right? So, like for me, it's mental health specific. It is crisis specific. So, that umbrella kind of goes over several things, right? So, I do a little bit of hostage negotiation, right? I do, things like that. So it just comes down to specification when you get to that level of like detective and so on. So, that's the only difference. It's the same job in essence, but if you're like federal, it's obviously a lot bigger. If I'm local, it's just smaller.
Excellent. So let me ask you something.
Hmm.
I'm curious. I mean, you had a great career, you got 20 years in, you can go anytime you want. I know you're not going anywhere.
Hmm.
You've come up the ranks, you've passed all the tests. I commend you. Thank you for your service. But what's
Oh,
next for you personally?
oh, man, I would love to dive in head first to the wellness space. I think there's a huge need for first responders to have some kind of guidance on what overall wellness looks like, right?
Mm,
So I always say there's three staples in overall wellness, right? Physical, mental, and spiritual well-being.
right.
And I think if you have somebody that can kind of guide you on how to have that type of homeostasis with those three things, that can now enrich the career of a police officer, right? You can perform optimally, right? And you can kind of go to work and not view it as like, a shift, right? You can go to work and actually enjoy it because you're prepared now for the unknowns, and you can make the the decisions based off of the training that you're going to be getting from some of the stuff that I would like to give the police officers. So I think me diving into the wellness space and being able to give back to the first responder community is something that I'm looking to do. So I think I'm going to be doing something in that aspect where I'm, working with first responders, giving them the tools to, function on and off the job.
I think you're tailor-made for that. I think that would be a great second chapter to the Jay Lacayo book of life.
Thank you, man. Appreciate
I
that.
do. I mean, I think it'd be great. I mean, you walk the walk. We always, and please don't comment on this because I don't want you to get in trouble. We always tease, the donuts, the
Yeah.
coffee, they get the job, they're 22, they're thin, and then they get quite corpulent, things like that. You're the complete
Hmm.
opposite. Um,
Thank you, man. Appreciate that.
I'm curious. I mean, I'm sure you've had a lot of moments as an officer. People always ask me, do you remember that one patient where,
Mhm.
you felt great, you felt so good, you almost brought you to tears. Do you have that
Yeah.
moment in your head?
Yeah. I had a call some years ago where I talked a guy off of a roof. To me, that is
Mm.
the highlight of my police career, because it was such an intense situation. And I just had a heart to heart with somebody who was sitting on a roof who was having a hard time. And thank God I was able to connect. And that man walked away from that situation alive, and
Great.
nobody was hurt that day. So that's a good day
That,
at work.
that is a good day at work because I remember the movie Lethal Weapon. I saw what Mel Gibson did. That doesn't seem viable.
No, no, not at
You
all.
remember that one, huh?
Yeah, I do.
That was a good flick, but again, buddy cop stuff.
Yep.
So you have a podcast.
Yes, yes, I do.
Yes. Why don't you tell everybody about your podcast? It's vastly different than mine, so I want everybody to be exposed to it.
Yeah, it's the Rooted Progress podcast. We talk to people from all walks of life, and just ask them questions on what keeps them driven, right? What is your driving force, and what have you endured to get you to where you are? So I interview people from all walks of life, who are successful, and I know have seen some type of adversity. I think it's great for other people to hear someone's journey. A lot of the times we look at people and we judge them. And you may look at someone and say, hey, maybe they had an easy life, but then they tell you that some of the things that they had to overcome. And it's just it fills my cup to have conversations with people from all walks of life that have endured so much and have become successful people. So that's like the premise of my podcast.
Yeah, I've seen it. You got some great stuff there. And I agree with you. There's always that little switch.
Hmm.
That's why I asked you your why. There's always that thing. So people who love what they do and then thrive like you, there's a reason, there's a why. Like Mark Twain once said, the two most important days of your life are the day you're born and the day you know why.
Yes.
And then the addendum is that moment. The moment, I always tell everybody it's a moment that gets you in the movie theater for free, if you will.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
you get
Absolutely.
like you were talking about, and that's just great. So one more question.
Hmm.
You are chasing in a car a perpetrator, an assailant, and
Hmm.
you cross into Hartsdale, where I am, right here on Central Avenue, because I hear the alarms all the time. Do you have to stop because you're in a new town, city, or you're able to go?
No. No. If it's in, depending on the severity of the crime, right? They'll either terminate the pursuit, or they'll continue it. The beautiful thing about technology is that we can put it over the radio, and the neighboring jurisdiction can resume that. But depending on the severity of the crime, they will more than likely continue the chase.
Well, look, we got to get back in 10 years where you're still in shape, you're still transcending,
Hmm.
and you're doing your thing. And maybe then you'll be considering about retirement and doing that chapter number two. But don't
Yeah.
procrastinate. You got a lot to offer everybody. I appreciate your time.
Thank you,
Detective
man.
Jay Lacayo, great stuff. Rob Silverman, Proven Health Alternatives.